do so. It's free, at least on Instagram. But yeah, as we mentioned, we're going to dive right into the main part of this podcast, which is the picks against the spread. John and I already picked last episode for tonight's game, or if you're watching live stream or whatever, the Carolina game. Carolina Panthers were favored by 8.5 going to Houston. We both picked Carolina. I think we both the same reason. Davis Mills, first start, short week. Carolina's look really good. John made a post today. They're leading a lot of. They're the first in a few defensive categories. I think sacks. Is it takeaways? Sorry, I didn't.
It's points per game allowed, yards per game allowed, passing yards per game allowed, and then sacks.
Yeah. And then, granted, one was against the Jets, struggling team, but the other game was against a pretty good Saints team that we saw has talent. I mean, they whooped my Packers, so they're no scrubs. So there's legitimacy to those numbers, and obviously, I picked them. I beat you out in the waiver wire in our dynasty league to grab them. So they're a hot commodity. So we went Carolina there. Just now going on to the Sunday games. First one of the noon. Speaking of the Buffalo Bills, that's the first game we're going to. Going to be at Buffalo. Buffalo Bills favored by 7.5, hosting the Washington football team. Washington football team coming off that Thursday night thriller that they probably shouldn't have won, but won, and they have the extra few days rest. So, John, who do you think wins here and why?
This game was a tough one because it's over a touchdown. Washington, the defense they got, the amount of points they were able to put up last week against a good defense in New York. It was tough, but this is the game where I'm expecting Josh Allen to bounce back. I know that so far over the first 2 weeks, he has not looked very good. I think this is the Josh Allen bounce back game. A large part of that is because I was a bit surprised by Washington's defense. It felt like Taylor Heineke and Daniel Jones and the Giants were able to really kind of get a lot of whatever they wanted against Washington. It feels like the pass rush isn't getting home as much as people have expected them to. And I can't give credit to the Giants offensive line for that. It's not like they're loaded with talent. So yeah, I think that the Bills, they're a better offense than the Giants were. I think they're going to put up major points here. I expect, I don't know. I haven't been impressed by William Jackson, so I expect maybe Stephon Diggs to have a really good game here too. I think Josh Allen, like Daniel Jones did last week, I think Josh Allen could have some success with his legs. So I'm really banking on this being a Bills offensive explosion after last week. Even though they put up 35, right? It didn't feel like it was the Bills offense of last year that was as efficient as they could have been in these last two games. So I'm banking on the Bills here to really blow up offensively, but I am a little bit worried that Washington, because of how good they have looked so far, could keep it close. So this is one I'm a little more iffy on, but I'm taking Buffalo. We'll see if I'm right.
Yeah, so in terms of who's going to win, I'm a little more confident in the Bills, but I picked Washington to cover this one. 7.5 just a little bit too much. I feel like extra few days rest. Because really what I felt like, what happened in the Thursday night game against the Giants, I just think short week. Because really in the second half it was very much more noticeable. Just the Washington pass rush did seem to die down, and I think that's more just a short week. They played a hard game against the Chargers that Sunday before, come in and play another close game against the Giants. Now they have a few days rest to go against Buffalo. But yeah, I just, especially with the emergence of Buffalo's defense, it does scare me in terms of Washington not being able to cover. That's one of the main reasons why I think Buffalo will be able to win. I think they'll at least get a takeaway or two or a key stop or two if they need it against Taylor Heineke. And on the flip side, though, like John mentioned, I think Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs can be, I don't want to call them the equalizers, but the X factors in terms of getting them the win. And it does scare me, though, that this could be a 7-point game and they get a field goal or a late touchdown. But I tried to play that kind of mindset week one, didn't work with me too well, so I'm going with Washington here, and we'll see what happens for that one. But one of our disagreements of the week here right off the bat. But going on to the next game, it's going to be at Cleveland, the Dog Pound. They are also favored by 7.5, and they are hosting the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields' first start. It's already been confirmed. Andy Dalton will not be playing, so there's no magic behind the curtain. Unsure. Justin Fields is going to start Sunday, make his first NFL start. So John, who are you going with? You going with Fields in the first start, or are we sticking with the dog pound?
I'm going to take the Bears here, and I have a few key reasons why. The Browns have been really efficient offensively, and I mean that part does scare me, but at the same time, Baker Mayfield isn't having like crazy games in the air. Like he's completing a lot of his passes, but they're not necessarily destroying teams. And I feel like that's really right now, at least, where you figure the Bears might be weakest is the back end of their defense. But even then, they still have talent, right? They still have Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson looks pretty good. So I'm we'll see what we get on that end. But overall, I'm just a bit worried about the Browns defense. I mean, last week Tyrod Taylor and the Texans were able to keep up with them pretty easily. Tyrod was completing an absurd percentage of his passes. I think he only had one incompletion before he got knocked out of the game. And, Mills comes in, isn't necessarily able to replicate that same success, but it still was a relatively close game. So, yeah, I think that Justin Fields, although, he didn't have an amazing week last week, I think that the ability for him to run is going to keep a lot of their drives alive where maybe the Bears offensive line would crumble. A guy like Myles Garrett's going to come in for a sack, but Fields has the legs and the speed to try and keep plays alive. And I think this could be a week where Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson absolutely take advantage of a secondary who is good, but isn't necessarily locked down to where they could get some yardage here. So once again, another risky pick because obviously Cleveland feels really safe with just their monster run game and their ability to, always put up points. But I like I said, I'm just not super impressed by their defense. 7.5, like you said with Washington, for me, it feels a little bit big for Cleveland to, get that room and really run away with it, especially if they are having to rely on their run game, which is going to eat more clock and maybe not necessarily give them as much time to, run away with a lead. So I'm taking Fields, the rookie here. Maybe I have a little, misguided faith in him, but I think that he could have a pretty solid game here.
So obviously, I think Cleveland's going to win as well, but I believe, unlike John, that they will cover. It does scare me their defense. Their defense has not been impressive, as I feel like everyone, not just us, just feels like that. The talent should be. Granted,
Right.
It's been more of their secondary in the past game they've had issues with, which
Right.
I don't foresee being that Chicago being able to capitalize even with Justin Fields and Allen Robinson. I'm not a big believer in Matt Nagy. It's more him than those two.
Which is fair.
Yeah, so it does scare me, like John mentioned. It's Justin Fields' first start, and like I just alluded to, we don't know if it's going to be a totally different offense. So there's that element of surprise. But I just feel like, and I'm not saying this, we've seen this with all the really rookies except for Mac Jones, but all of them, and Trey Lance hasn't really even had any playing time. All the others, they made some mistakes early on. I just feel like Justin's going to make maybe one too many mistakes to cover the spread. I think it could be like a 9-point game. Regardless, I just think Cleveland at home, this is a game they should win. And I think that they'll take care of business. But, man, I'm not 100% confident on it. Once again, forgot to mention this. If you're betting on all these games, which shout out to the person that got 15 out of 16 right, almost got their parlay last week.
I hope they hedged it and at least got half off.
I don't think they did. I think it was one of those ones where like they use the cash like from when you start. They say, "Oh, we'll give you 15 free dollars." I think that's I read that's what it was. So he couldn't cash it in. He had to the bet had to go through all the way, and it didn't, unfortunately.
Dang.
But yeah, if you're actually putting real money on this stuff, good luck. Because like I said, we've already been doing John's doing better this year. He's at an even 500 though. But once again, John's almost doing great. He's at an even 500.
Yeah.
And I haven't even looked at some of the experts and analysts. I might do that next, just see where we're at compared to them. I'm just curious. I'm not saying we're better or we're probably worse, but who knows? I'm just saying this is kind of a crapshoot. But yeah, that was a tough game. So I'm going Cleveland to win and cover there. But keeping in that division for Cleveland, actually both divisions, the AFC North and NFC North. Baltimore, fresh off that revenge game against Kansas City, favored by 9.5, going to Detroit. to play the Lions. I imagine we both feel like Baltimore will win. Question is, do we feel like they will cover that spread? John, do you think Baltimore can cover that 9.5 point spread?
I went out on a limb with Detroit last week. I felt pretty confident in the first
Hey,
half, but both of their games, what were you gonna say?
I was like, it was looking good. I would have, and they should. It should have been. It was this game was closer than the score indicated. I feel.
Yeah, but just I mean, both of their games really they have one good half and then one abysmal half. With the Niners, they sucked in the first half, turned it on in the second one. The Packers was the opposite. So I'm just not going to do it again. I'm taking Baltimore here. Yeah, that's I don't really have much else to
Yeah,
say.
I mean, I forget. I mean, yeah, we've ran to that mistake last year with like your Cowboys were one of those teams where we kept riding that wagon, hoping it would hit, and it just didn't for like a few weeks. I think we also were sleeping on the Giants on just to be on the other side of the spectrum. Remember, they were like the cover kings in the first 10 weeks, so it can always be tough. But I'm going Baltimore as well to cover. Just the momentum, I feel like, too, of winning that game against Kansas City, getting that monkey off your back. And I feel like that should inject some sort of confidence for them. The pass game looks solid enough, and I'm not even sure what we saw last week. I mean, Detroit had issues stopping the Packers, really. And I think that Baltimore's defense is more sound and better than Detroit, especially at stopping the run, which is really what kept Detroit in the game for so long, was that they were just gashing us in the run game, and then the rain happened and they couldn't pass. But yeah, going Baltimore here. I'm not going to go on a long tangent here. Just the better, more talented team, plain and simple. So yeah, is that for that? Sorry, Detroit probably gonna go 0-3. Shout out to our good friend Max, Detroit fan. Hang in there, guys. But going on to the next one here, a little divisional matchup. The Tennessee Titans at home off that big comeback win against Seattle. They are favored by 5.5, hosting the Indianapolis Colts. Last I checked, I still question, at least at time we're recording on a Thursday, Carson Wentz's status is still up in the air of whether he will play. I think they mentioned, though, if need be, they will go with Jacob Eason. But, John, who do you have here to win and or cover?
I can't pick the Colts with the question marks around Carson Wentz. I know that if Carson Wentz isn't playing, the line is going to move, and even at that point, no matter what the line moves to, I'm probably just going to stick with the Titans. So I'm just playing it safe here because even if Carson Wentz is good to go, I can't imagine that he's 100% and that he's playing through something. So I'm just going to play it safe here. I'm going to take Tennessee. We saw last week that they got their offense going. Julio had a good game. Derrick Henry bounced back after the poor first week. So I think they're going to try and ride that, continue, build more offensive success and chemistry, and really get going against this Colts team. And it's a divisional matchup. So these are pretty crucial games you're gonna want to win. So I think the Tennessee Titans are going to really come out and try to just capitalize on just the concerns around the Colts, in this week.
Yeah, I think I'm going the same thing, going Tennessee to win and cover. Just both injuries, to have, even if like he's healthy enough to play, he's not 100%. To have sprains in both your ankles, and Carson Wentz is pretty
Right.
reliant on not reliant, but his mobility is a big part of what he is, and even just throwing the ball, like that it affects that too. So, and then especially if it isn't Carson Wentz or Jacob Eason, I'm not particularly confident in that either. And yeah, like John mentioned, Tennessee's offense is rolling too, starting to kind of find the rhythm. We saw Derrick Henry get going, and I imagine, I mean, what's like we mentioned in their preview, like it's just hard, like you stop Derrick Henry, but then if AJ Brown and Julio, which we saw Julio last week, get going, like it's tough to pick you literally have to kind of pick your poison. And especially with India, especially since their offense won't be helping much, I don't think that they'll be able to stay close in this game, at least within 5.5. So yeah, I'm going Tennessee as well to win and cover there. Going on to the next one here, another divisional matchup. Kansas City at Arrowhead, favored by 6.5, hosting the LA Chargers, fresh off their loss against Dallas. Both these teams going off kind of tough losses. So John, who do you have here and why in this divisional matchup?
This one felt like a tough one too, but at the end of the day, the rationale that I fell on that trumped everything was I can't bring myself to go against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid after a loss. I just can't do it. Also, the Chargers last week, there's a lot of undisciplined stuff that was going on. They had a lot of flags against them, and that wasn't Herbert's fault. That wasn't, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, a lot of the key contributors. It was just some of the other younger guys. Rashawn Slater had a few flags. Norton, their right tackle, had a few. So, yeah, I think that there was about like almost 100 yards called back, when it came to passing plays because of flags. So I think that if any of that sloppiness carries over here, Kansas City's going to make you pay for it. And like I said, I couldn't bring myself to pick against Mahomes and Andy Reid after losing in prime time.
Cool. Sorry, I just got a notification. Sam Darnold rushing touchdown. I'm not sure if you saw that.
Yeah, I'm a
Which
little
I'm
mad
sorry.
because I
Oh,
almost took the I almost took the over on Darnold rushing yards
oof.
like right before the game. I don't know how long it was, but I imagine that he's
And I
probably
made
going
the.
to do
I
it.
also sorry. I also was very tough decision. I started DJ Moore. I put Debo Samuel in the flex because I'm still deciding between Debo and Kelsey. So we'll talk about that later. But yeah, Carolina's already off to a good start. Sorry, the game's going on right as we
Okay,
do
it
this.
was
But
like a 6 yarder, I think, so
yeah,
not crazy
hey,
long.
6 points in fantasy, 6 points. But
Yep.
I'm going LA Chargers here. It's just at least especially in recent years, the Chargers have always kind of kept it close with Kansas City. Their defense is, built to stop the big play, and that's what Kansas City has built their offense to, and they've been really good at that Seattle scheme. And I imagine, especially, Brand Staley, defensive coach, especially like you mentioned, had a lot of mistakes, penalties last week. I expect that to be a point of emphasis going into this game. And especially at home last week's game, like that was just really inexcusable. Like if you're the away team, it can kind of be understandable, but really, I imagine they'll clean it up. This isn't for the Chargers, and especially Herbert. Herbert, had that pretty bad, not pretty bad. It had that pick, very crucial pick at the end of the game. I think he'll clean up his game. For Kansas City, though, that does worry me. What you mentioned, coming off a loss, they're gonna be upset, but um, and it's just leaning on to recent history. Chargers are a good team. It does scare me though. I think I saw something. Joey Bosa didn't practice or something today, so he might be questionable for the game, which is really important, obviously, for the Chargers. But hey, I'm sticking with the Chargers for now. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's not like I'm putting money on this, so that is another one of our differences there. Going on to the next one, another good game in the noon slot here. The New England Patriots at Foxborough, favored by 3.5. Sorry, 2.5. Read the wrong line. 2.5, hosting the New Orleans Saints and Jameis, fresh off their loss against or butt whooping, if you want to say that, against the Panthers. John, you going with LASIK surgery here or Bill Belichick?
Yeah, the Saints feel too inconsistent for me. I trusted them after the week 1 win, and then they burnt me last week. And I know that, the Panthers right now, like we talked about, are looking like the best defense in the league, early on. But it's still Bill Belichick. Like, although his defense isn't the best, like he's just the master of game planning against quarterbacks. I think he's going to force Jameis into some turnovers here with some, different tricks and things that, he's going to be seeing things that maybe not, aren't there. Some, seeing ghosts potentially. Um, I don't know. Maybe the LASIK has cleared that kind of stuff up. I don't think so. So, yeah, I'm taking the Patriots here. Also, they've made sure that offensively, they're not putting Mac in positions to where he's having to make really tough decisions. And I think that's just boding well for their ability to win the turnover battle because they're playing it safe. They're giving him good play calls. They're making sure that he's got protection. He's making the right, throws. And then they're still relying on the run game and Damian Harris. So, yeah, I'm taking the Patriots here because the Saints, they just feel so inconsistent. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I accept that. And that'll be the wild card badge.
Yeah, I'm going New England to win and cover here as well. Um, not saying they're as talented as Carolina's defense because obviously they've invested. Carolina's got a lot of talent on that defense and they utilize it well. But New England's not far off, and I think they're going to put a very similar game plan. Just focus on stopping the run, and they definitely have the corners and the secondary to probably just man up or really put that passing game in a bind. And like also once again the James effect. It's everyone was going off for week one saying he's fixed, but last week I think he threw 2 picks right last week. I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
I know one was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So and on the flip side, Marshawn Lattimore out again. I know this New England offense isn't amazing and Mac Jones isn't tearing up defenses, but they've been solid enough. And like John mentioned, I think they can lean on the run. They'll probably have a few more pass plays, and especially as Mac Jones gets more and more accustomed to running the offense, I think they'll open it more up, especially in the passing game for him. So, yeah, I'm going New England here to win and cover. Also, I think like kind of John alluded to, there's just a lot less risk, I would say, with New England. Like we kind of know what they are at this point. New Orleans, like we saw 2 different performances from them. So it's tough to gauge like where they are in terms of in terms of the NFL, like in your head. So like, are they elite? Are they good? Are they solid? Still really don't know. So yeah, going New England there. So for that one, going on to the next game here, the New York Giants at home following that heartbreaking loss against Washington. They are hosting this week the Atlanta Falcons, and the Giants are favored by 3.5. John, you going with your division foe here or going with the Dirty Birds?
At this point, and we're going to get into this a little later with our fantasy starts and sits, but if you're playing the Falcons, you start the players. And I think that the Giants are going to have some offensive success against Atlanta. Saquon Barkley hasn't necessarily had his comeback game yet, but he showed some moments where it's like, okay, Saquon's still Saquon. And I expect this to potentially be that game where Saquon, maybe tops 100 yards and really is able to dominate. I expect Kenny Galladay to have a good game as well because the Falcons secondary just can't stop anybody. And then Daniel Jones, I mean, he's looked pretty solid so far, although I'm not a big fan of him. Once again, it's the Falcons defense. I have no faith in them. So I'm trusting in the Jason Garrett offense here. I mean, maybe old Jason will burn me here, but I'm not really worried about the Falcons at all.
By the way, shout out Sadiq. Came in our chat, said New England is 100% going to cover. So that's a Sadiq lock.
Yep, Sadiq lock.
But all right, sorry, there's regards. But yeah, I'm with you in this one. It's the Giants. Giants are going to win this one. Atlanta, like we kind of anticipated, just kind of a mess right now. New coaching staff, their defense, not much, very top heavy in talent, and it's not like that top. No offense to Grady Jarrett, Deion Jones, but not really top heavy in talent. Like those guys are pretty good, but not Aaron Donald-ish level or anything like that. Especially with the talent around them. So, and once again, Giants extra few days rest. Yeah, I anticipate, if anything, even if their offense isn't great, their defense will do enough to keep them in this game. Sorry, Falcons fans. This ain't going to be your year. Shout out to that one. He said he wasn't a Falcons fan, right? That one commenter on our Falcons video.
Yeah.
Said, not looking good, man. I'm not going to say you were absolutely wrong yet. Still 2 weeks in the season, but it ain't looking good.
I don't get like where that faith came from. Like, I mean,
if you're not, I just understand it because like he said he wasn't a fan of the Falcons, but defended them very heavily.
If you're not a fan of the Falcons, like I can't see any non-fan like truly having the bold take
that they will be contenders this year. In
a division with the up-and-coming Panthers, the Super Bowl champs.
Saints,
and although the Saints are inconsistent, it's still Sean Payton. Like I'll take Sean Payton over the Falcons any day of the week. So I don't get it anyway.
So yeah, sorry. Enough about that. We both go on the Giants here to win and cover. Or leave it at that. So now going into another divisional matchup for the AFC North. Pittsburgh Steelers at Heinz Field, favored by 3.5, hosting Joe Burrow and the boys and the Cincinnati Bengals. John, who are you going with, the Terrible Towel or the Bungles?
This game also felt weird for me. A lot of games this week honestly did.
I felt like the games were pretty easy to pick, or like they're like this where you're like, oh my gosh, this could go either way. Like there was no real in between, which I guess there really isn't, but
Yeah. So I initially picked Cincinnati, but I changed my mind to Pittsburgh, and the reason why is I think Joe Burrow is going to have a really tough day. I really do. I don't think Joe Mixon's going to be able to help much either against this defense. And we saw last week that against Chicago that I mean they did make a little bit of comeback at the end, but for a while that Bears defense was really holding them off. So I don't know the health status of like guys like TJ Watt who did get some injuries last week, but I still just think that the Steelers defense is just going to put a beating on Joe Burrow and the Bengals. He's so far Joe Burrow's been sacked on 13% of his dropbacks, which is really high. And I don't think it's entirely the offensive line. I think part of it too might be that he's holding the ball a little bit longer, or the receivers aren't getting a ton of separation. And it's crazy because they have really good receivers, but yeah, I don't know. There's something off here so far that it's the offensive line is obviously bad, but also I think there's something with the receivers or Joe Burrow that's also contributing to that high of a sack percentage. So I think Pittsburgh's defense is really where my confidence comes from here. And yeah, also Big Ben, I think he took accountability last week on their loss. So I'm expecting him to play better than he did against the Raiders. And I don't think that the Bengals defensive line is going to put as much pressure as the Raiders defensive line was able to, although I still expect them to have success. But yeah, I'm taking the Steelers here. But like I said, it was a tough one to pick. I went back and forth.
So I'm going with Cincinnati here. I got a few concerns. Obviously, TJ Watt, I just looked at it right now. As per ESPN, still listed as questionable on the injury report for Sunday, and he's dealing with a groin injury, which, as I mentioned before, I've had a kind of a groin injury. It sucks. It's random. 1 minute you're fine, next minute you you cannot move. And granted, I don't know what medicine they're giving him, so he might be fine. But regardless, too, Big Ben dealing with a pec injury on his non-throwing side as well. And it's just regardless, like we mentioned before on the reactions pod, like I just haven't been impressed with Pittsburgh's offense, especially their passing offense hasn't progressed since last year. See, it feels pretty much the same. Only difference on their offense is they're more emphasis on running the ball, but unfortunately their O-line isn't as talented to run the ball, and B, their passing game isn't really pushing teams back, even though they have the weapons to do so. Deontay Johnson, let me double check. I think he was also questionable for this game.
He's still questionable.
Yeah. So, I mean, granted, if you're Chase Claypool and like I am, you're hoping for, kind of like last season when Deontay was hurt. Chase really, that's when he had his good games because he had more opportunity. But still, I feel like the Bengals will keep this one close. They did win last year with, was it Kyle? It wasn't Kyle Allen. Was it Tyler Allen? I don't know. It was some
Brandon Allen.
Brandon Allen. See, that's why I'm going to make it Brandon Allen. I just feel like, especially it's a division rival, they kind of know what Pittsburgh likes to do defensively. I don't think they'll get as fooled as much as like a Buffalo would. Because even the Raiders it wasn't until the second half that they kind of settled in and started, I think they started figuring out what Pittsburgh was doing.
Right.
Regardless, even if the Bengals don't win, which I wouldn't be shocked if they did, I think they'll keep it close. Probably like a 2017 type game. I think Joe Burrow had some bad picks last week. I think he'll bounce back from that. So I'll go on Cincinnati for this one. Sorry for the lengthy explanation there, but I think the Bengals will at least cover. If I had to pick who would win, I think Pittsburgh might win if Big Ben plays and if TJ Watt plays. But if either one are out, I think Cincinnati wins as well. But could be very wrong there. So, alrighty. Going on to the next one here. This one will probably be short and sweet. Arizona Cardinals, favored by 7.5, going to Jacksonville. Are you shocking me, John?
No, it's the Jags. Like, I don't know if there will be any point in the season where I'll be picking them unless things really turn around. But right now, it's just, Trevor Lawrence is throwing interceptions. That's giving the other team easy field position. That's giving their defense momentum. The Cardinals have looked pretty good so far. And then obviously Kyler Murray and that offense, they're looking like a well-oiled machine, which shout out Cliff Kingsbury because he's doing something right so far. And I don't think that Jacksonville has the defensive talent to throw anything off on that end. So yeah, I'm taking the Cardinals pretty easily here. This one has the feeling of being a blowout.
Yeah, I'm not going to even say anything else. Like John took the words right out of my mouth. That's all that needs to be said about this game. I am going Arizona to win and cover as well. So sorry, Jacksonville. Maybe next year. Going on to the next one. the Denver Broncos at Mile High hosting the New York Jets. They are favored by 10.5. I assume we both feel that Denver's going to win. Big question is, will they cover that 10.5 point spread? John, do you believe that they will cover that 10.5 point spread?
I do, and I mean they call him Ted the spread for a reason. Teddy Bridgewater covers. Also, we're playing a Jets team that did you see that video that I sent you on
The
Instagram?
kid,
Yeah,
I saw it even before you sent me, but I saw it
yeah.
again.
I
Just that kid
mean,
breaking down. Like, it was just like terrible pass protection. Two
just
guys not blocking someone over there, and then I
like
think,
everything was wrong.
and
There was
then
nothing right about
Zach
that.
Wilson, I think, made a bad read too. It was just bad on bad on bad, and
Which even in his defense, like what read is there to make there? There was nothing. The receivers are
he's
getting
about
no
to get drilled
space.
anyway. Like, it's just
Yeah, like every offensive lineman was losing their battle. I think Mekhi Becton's still out. So I just what do you really expect from this Jets team right now? I'm not expecting a lot. Denver has looked solid so far. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater, he wins turnover battles. He does not turn the ball over. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, the two-headed attack has been working. They've been splitting carries pretty evenly, and both have had success. Cortland Sutton last week, what a monster performance. I expect him to ball out again this week. So, yeah, I can't pick the Jets.
yeah. I'm not going to evaluate much further. Jets defense is kind of just slowly falling apart. Secondary wasn't good to begin with, and yeah, like we already alluded to, even though I believe in Zach Wilson, it's going to be a tough year.
Yeah.
When Corey Davis is your best receiver. I mean, Elijah Moore isn't in the game much playing time, probably because he's a rookie. Like we already said, that line's a mess. They're trying to run the Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur system, which is very predicated on establishing a run game. They don't have a run game right now, so it's going with Denver to win and cover. That's just.
I will say this about Elijah Moore. The snaps that he does get to play, his target percentage is actually pretty high. Now, once again, like you said, he's not playing every snap, so it's not like he is blowing it out. But I think what that means is Zach Wilson does like him, and we could be in for a fantasy breakout game sometime soon. So do keep a lookout for that. If you are an Elijah Moore fantasy owner, don't drop him. Keep him on the bench.
Let's say, do I have him in our dynasty league, or do you have him?
No, I think Snowbird has him. I tried to trade for him. He said no.
Yeah, I don't have him. I thought I did. No, I got Tutu Atwell instead. Okay. All right, so that we both win Denver there. No shocker there. We're keeping in actually both those divisions. The Las Vegas Raiders at home, aka the Death Star. I just love that little nickname for it. Favored by 4.5, hosting the Miami Dolphins. No, or two, I believe is question. He's already been ruled out, I believe, right?
Yeah, he's
already been ruled out. Jacoby Brissett, the starter for the Miami Dolphins. John, you believing in Brissett, or are you going with Johnny Gruden and the boys?
I can't. It's like a lot of these other teams with their backup quarterbacks. It's just tough to pick a backup quarterback to cover, especially against the Raiders team that's hot right now. I think the one biggest strength that the Dolphins have is their cornerbacks, but are they going to put any of them on Darren Waller? I don't imagine so. And so I can't imagine that Darren Waller is going to have any indication of not being able to do what he normally does. And then also just on the other side, the Raiders defensive line has been really impressive so far. And the Dolphins might have one of, if not the worst offensive line in the league. So, yeah, I'm taking the Raiders here, and it's maybe if Tua was there, maybe if they didn't get shut out last week, maybe there's a chance for me to pick the Raiders here. But also the fact that they're at home, just all the factors make it feel like it's easy Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'm going with Las Vegas Raiders as well to win and cover. No Tua. I mean, I know Brissett's a solid quarterback, but like John mentioned, not a great offensive line. The run game really hasn't been getting going, which has put a lot more pressure on their pass game, which is still, especially even with Tua, but now with Brissett, still kind of finding their way with that. And then on the flip side, this Raiders offense, they've sort of figured it out. John Gruden's the offensive lines look solid, so credit Gruden and Mayock for kind of knowing what they were doing, letting all those guys go. And then, like we mentioned too, the receivers, Henry Ruggs, starting to kind of figure it out. It looks like Brian Edwards has been solid. So even though I think it's going to be a ugly game, which makes me worry that's going to be like John Gruden's going to be okay with that. Let it be a 13-10 game. Who knows? Maybe Las Vegas will create some sort of turnover and get a score off that. But yeah, I'm going Las Vegas to cover as well and win here.
You saying that about Gruden, I don't know why. It just made me think like I bet Gruden's like the only coach who like loves when the game gets ugly. Like
I mean,
nothing's really going right,
it was
but it's like
was it
just a
against the
dog
Browns?
fight.
He like ran Josh Jacobs. It was like 10-6 or something. We ran Josh Jacobs like 40 times for like 90 yards and like one touchdown last year.
Probably.
I had Josh Jacobs last. There was a game like that. Someone can remember
Yeah.
there was, but there was a game like that. And I was sitting there like, that's typical John Gruden, and it's probably, I don't want to say he's the reason, but probably why we shouldn't be too shocked by Josh Jacobs is already dealing with a lot of minor injuries at this point of
Yeah.
his career. But once again, I don't know. That could just be Josh Jacobs as well. But yeah, both going with the Raiders there. Going on to probably one of the games of the weekend, if not the game of the weekend. Tampa Bay Buccaneers favored by 1.5 going to the LA Rams, SoFi Stadium. That stadium looks really nice, by the way.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this is probably the best game of the weekend. So, John, who do you have here in this heavyweight matchup? Both teams 2-0.
Yeah, both 2-0, 1.5 point spread. At this point, it just feels like you're picking to win. And I almost went with the Rams, but I'm going with Tampa, and that's because it's Tom Brady. He finds ways to win. The Bucks have looked really good so far, and part of me feels like this could be a good running attack for the Bucks this week. The Rams haven't had the greatest of success against stopping opposing runners. Jonathan Taylor didn't have like a monster performance by any means last week, but he had 5 goal line carries, wasn't able to convert any of them. And so I don't expect that to be like the normal. So I do think that, we get some Leonard Fournette action potentially in this one. And I'll get a little bit more into the Buccaneers in the starts and sits because I do have some of them in there. But yeah, I'm taking Tampa. Wouldn't be shocked if the Rams win this one because I do think that Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are going to have a really good day. As we've seen with the Buccaneers, their secondary isn't going to, really destroy anybody. But yeah, I'm taking Tampa because I think that they're going to have the ability to turn the Rams into sort of a one-dimensional team and just force them to pass all day long. And we've seen even against my Cowboys, they were able to come out and win that one. It was by 1 point, so if that was the same spread, they wouldn't have covered. But I don't know. I'm taking the Buccaneers basically.
Oof. So I'm taking the LA Rams. Let me just start there. I think obviously there's a weakness to the Bucs defense you want to attack. It's going to be the passing game. And I think especially like we mentioned with balls of the week, there's already a connection between Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford. Robert Woods really hasn't been doing well production wise, but I think I feel like this Rams receiving core can still pose problems, even with because then they also have Van Jefferson. And I think Sean McVay will still be patient enough with the run game. That the LA Rams will be able to move the ball, maybe get a few key scores. On the other end, I am worried about Tampa's run game and if they'll stay committed to it because their offensive line is one of the best run blocking offensive lines, if not the best in the league. Got a lot of big people, and the Rams are really more built on speed and finesse, even with Aaron Donald. So that does worry me, but I just feel like, especially maybe. Jalen Ramsey's going to take out one of those guys, whoever he's guarding, depending on the situation. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, no Antonio Brown this week, probably. I think I'm not sure. I know he's on the COVID list. Not sure if we'll make it back in time. But yeah, regardless, I feel like LA is going to win this one, and I feel like they have just being at home will help. East Coast team going the West, and that's not a big thing. I don't know. I got a feeling with the Rams, this is it has to be their statement game. And for the Bucks, I mean, last week they kind of do what the Chiefs do, where they just, they were in cruise control for 3 quarters, and fourth quarter, it's like, okay, let's end this game with the Falcons.
Right.
They did so. And I feel like the coasting may cost them, but that's just, to be honest, that's kind of a reach for me. So, going with LA Rams here to obviously win and cover, and we'll see what happens. But that definitely one of the games I will be watching Sunday in the afternoon slot. But going to the last game in the afternoon slot, the Seattle Seahawks, they are also favored by 1.5, going to Minnesota, and the Vikings, fresh off their just two tough losses for the Vikings, really. But yeah, John, who are you going here? You going with Seattle or Minnesota?
My logic might be entirely flawed here, but here's where my thought process goes. And first off, I'm going to start with I'm taking Minnesota. Once again, 1.5 point spread. You're kind of picking who wins, and I'm going to say Minnesota wins this game. And my thought process is they've lost their two games by a combined 4 points. All right, heartbreakers. They were a field goal away from winning both of them, essentially. And I think that the falling in the 0-3 hole is going to put them in such a desperation mode that it's we have to win now. And I think Mike Zimmer is going to instill that in them because he's been in the playoffs before. He knows what it takes, but he's also had times where he wasn't. So yeah, I'm taking the Vikings here. Once again, maybe my thought process here is flawed, and I'm ignoring Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Chris Carson, all those guys, because I think they're going to have success. But I'm banking on the potential desperation that Minnesota could feel. I'm worried they're going to let me down, and they're not going to have that urgency. And Seattle does what they do because I think Seattle is the better team. But that's what I'm going with. I'm going to stick with it. That's what my gut tells me.
I'm going with Seattle, especially losing last week. It's just he had the game and he kind of blew it per se. That's got to be a heartbreaker. But I still think that they're a more talented team than Minnesota, especially with Russell. I mean, Minnesota, you just spent last week chasing around Kyler Murray. Hey, now this week you have to chase around Russell Wilson. So that's going to be tough. And then also just we saw last week Arizona was able to expose a few different coverages, get some guys wide open like Rondale Moore because of Kyler's legs. And I think Seattle has a better top two receivers than Arizona's top two. Obviously, D Hop's real good, but Lockett and Metcalf are such a tough combo to guard. And yeah, so I'm going with Seattle here to win. And on the other side, defensively, they were able to slow down Derrick Henry for at least a half. It's just the gates burst open. Henry found some good cutback lanes, saw that they were just really over pursuing on that end of the ball. So, and I think especially Dalvin Cook is kind of questionable too for this game. And I think we saw at the end of last game, like he wasn't. One of the reasons why Minnesota's offense kind of fell off is because he wasn't 100%.
Right.
It didn't seem like he didn't have the same burst. He wasn't. So even if he plays or not, I'm worried about that. So I'm going with Seattle here to win. And they desperately need it just as much as Minnesota, with San Francisco being 2-0. Rams could easily be 3-0. And the Cardinals also probably will be 3-0 of all the teams, definitely. So, yeah, going with Seattle here. I feel like they're just as desperate as well, but we'll see how that one goes. But now going on to the Sunday nighter, my Green Bay Packers. They are the underdogs. It's going to be at San Francisco. They are favored by 3.5, hosting my Packers. John, do you believe in my Packers, or is it going to be another San Francisco / Raheem Mostert running all over us? Even though I know Raheem's not in this game, insert running back here is going to run all over Green Bay.
I'm a bit surprised that San Francisco is actually favored here. I know they are 2-0, but it felt like both games they kind of scraped by against teams that are not very good. They dominated Detroit early on, but then they allowed Detroit to sort of, find some holes late. And I think that Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, I think just being motivated after the week one embarrassment and just hearing all the doubters in the media and people turning on them, I think that they're going to come out and make a statement. Also, I don't know the status of all the Niners running backs right now. Trey Sermon's questionable. Elijah Mitchell's questionable. I know that they can plug in anybody, but still, when you do get less talented backs, it could potentially limit what you're able to do offensively. So, yeah, I'm going to take Green Bay here. Like I said, I don't think that Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay are gonna fall to 1-2 like that. That's just my gut right there. I can't see it. I think they're too good and talented of a team and an offense to do that. And so I think, just their offense is going to blow up. And I don't know. I still expect their defense to have some success. I know in the past the Niners have had success running against them, but we'll see what happens there.
That's what does scare me, though. Even if I feel like the run game still might be solid enough, Especially with their pass game, we'll be getting. We're seeing Debo Samuel have a good year so far, and maybe they get. And George Kittle has always killed the Packers every time. I mean, I know he's a great tight end, but like we always just let him go off.
Right.
But I anticipate Green Bay keeping it closer, and it may be because of our offense, especially with San Francisco's secondary isn't as talented as it has been years past. Nick Bosa still isn't quite 100%. It looks like he's still kind of getting back to him. But that it does scare me that if we don't get our run game going, that it will be a hard offensive game. And the other thing that scares me is Packers on the West Coast in recent years. We have not been good at all. But regardless, I think we'll win this game. If not, we'll definitely cover the 3.5. Like John mentioned, this is a Packer team that's, especially with Aaron Rodgers, too proud, and they're going to at least want to keep this game close. And like I mentioned, San Francisco has holes as well. And like John mentioned too, they've
Yep.
blown some leads. Obviously Detroit was more of just foot off the gas pedal, but the Eagles, the Eagles were in that game for most of the game. It's just, Eagles couldn't really punch through when they needed to.
Yeah.
So, going with my Packers here to at least cover. Hopefully they win, and we'll see.
Also, just for the record, like who's going to guard Devontae Adams, right? Like,
Yeah. Well,
their secondary is pretty depleted right now.
yeah, but I mean, yeah, I'm still worried about offensive line too. Like, you know what I mean? Like we saw
Yeah.
against New Orleans. Like it didn't matter that they had Paulson and Debo on him for a quarter. They were getting through and disrupting Rodgers real fast before he could even see him. So
Right.
we'll see though. They could easily take advantage of that matchup. But go on to the last game. Speaking of the Eagles, your Dallas Cowboys at Jerry's World on Monday night, favored by 3.5, hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Dallas fresh off the win against the Chargers. Philly fresh off that loss against San Francisco, as we just noted. John, who are you going with in this game and why?
I'm taking the Cowboys here. I haven't taken them 2 weeks in a row. Maybe that's why they've covered 2 weeks in a row. Maybe I'm going to curse them, but I don't know. I'm taking Dallas here. They're at home. They tend to have really, successful games against Philadelphia. Zeke, his career average rushing against them is like 98 yards. So I expect the run attack to have success here. I love that Tony Pollard got involved a lot last week. I think that's going to continue. They're going to have this two-headed running back attack. I mean, I love Zeke, but I would love it if that became, a really consistent part of our offense was two running backs being involved a lot, because I think Pollard just provides a lot of what Zeke doesn't, which is that speed, that burst, that extra sort of home run ability. So yeah, I'm just banking on the fact that I expect the Cowboys offense to put up a lot of points here. I know that Philly's defense has been good, but losing Brandon Graham really sucks. Zach Martin in the line. I mean, like, I didn't even do this in the reactions pod, but like, I have to give credit to Terrence Steele. He, along with the rest of the offensive line, held Joey Bosa to 0 sacks, only a few pressures. Like it was incredibly impressive. So I think the offensive line could have some success here as well. And overall, I've been really impressed with the Cowboys game planning. I think they lead the league right now in forced turnovers. I don't expect that to continue, but that just shows that Dan Quinn, like I said in the reactions, he's emphasizing forcing turnovers. I think they can get a few here, and I think their offense, once again, they'll put up points.
So all their games are pretty close.
Right.
So I'm going with Philly here because, except for the Falcons game, they blew them out. We know the Falcons suck. Even last week, like I mentioned, they hung tough. I know losing Brandon Graham sucks, but I believe they still have Derek Barnett. Josh Sweat, they just signed to an extension. I think their D-line will be okay. What does scare me about Philly is I'm worried that their secondary is going to get ripped apart by Dallas. And on the flip side, Dallas is off defense. I think we talked about it. I'm not sure we talked about it on the pod, maybe privately. Defense has been solid. Like, it hasn't been amazing, but it's been at least average to above average, which is all you can really ask for. But I feel like Philly, especially after last week, tough game against 49ers. Jalen Hurts didn't look too great. Statistically, I think he only completed just over 50% of his passes for the completion percentage people. But I expect Philly to come out with a better plan of attack this week, and especially passing wise, a little more creativity. I think Zach Ertz is also questionable. He's on the COVID list as well on Monday. If not, I think Dallas Goedert is still the guy there. And Philly's O-line is still good enough to, I think, help to get their run game going. But, Man, this is a tough one. I went with Philly just because Dallas has had some close games. Philly's been pretty competitive. Otherwise, I would really don't have a beat. This is one of the games where I'm glad there's a spread because I don't have a beat on who would win. So I'm going with Philly for now, but I could easily, very easily be wrong. But that'll be a great Monday night game for sure. I believe. At least it'll be close. May not be entertaining as some, but it'll be close. But so that is what, how many we had 1, 2, 3. I should have counted 4.
I think we have 7.
5,
Might be wrong on that.
I think we have 6.
Okay, 6.
At least 6, maybe 7. But we have at least 6 differences in terms of the records. Last week went 9-7. John went 8-8. So I got one game
7.
back.
I just counted. We have 7.
Okay, 7. So I could make ground. John could gain ground, or it kind of be like last week where like I barely make any ground. But yeah, going into this week, John is an even 500, 16-16 through 2 weeks. I am 13-19, so I am 3 games behind John. So we'll see if I can make some ground there.